And each of you should now see a white screen that says Holistic Health Series on Fridays. I'm Erik Peper, Professor of Holistic Health at San Francisco State, and I'm your speaker for today in this series called Health Series on Friday that has been organized by, and we have a number of different presentations each Friday to develop skills or to share skills that may be useful as some of us are, staying at home, being stuck or whatever. The question really is, how can we mobilize health? For today's presentation, I'll be talking about transforming technostress into TechnoHealth. As many of you may know, we are part of the Holistic Health Studies at San Francisco State, where students can take numerous classes for both a minor, a certificate, and part of the upper general education requirements. On that note, let's start and outline for a moment more. Just want to point out that this series occurs every week for the next 4 weeks. And Friday, we have a presentation on Eastern medicine, the following Friday on Ayurvedic medicine, and the final one on Friday the 15th on self-care and basics. So please, you're welcome to attend. The program today will be on technostress to technohealth. I love this picture because it really represents where we came from. And also look at the person sitting over on the right here, bend over, the head craning toward the computer, being totally captured, being totally immobilized, and slowly at times being more exhausted, tired, etc. And yet basically maybe health is when we can keep moving and live in respect to our evolutionary background. So that is a background of the presentation. Okay. For my outline, what I'll talk about today will be about Zoom fatigue. I think especially for faculty, for students, for employees, people all now working from home, many report it's more exhausting. So I'll talk a bit about that. I'll share some techniques and factors that contribute to technostress, then how to reduce discomfort at the computer and workstations, and if I have time, comments on staying healthier during COVID-19.
Erik, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that your voice, at least on my end, it cuts out a little bit.
Let me get closer. Is that better?
Thank you.
No, if it cuts out again, let me know. This is one of the challenges, as many of you experience with Zoom or with any of its online processes, is our technology at times that warbles back and forth. The screens warble. I'll go back in that in a moment. But ask yourself today, after you have worked at the computer or any digital device, how are you experiencing yourself? How many feel more tired? I now call that Zoom fatigue. How many have neck and shoulder discomfort? Their eyes get tired. Or, when you finish looking at the screen for a while, you look at the far distance and the world is more fuzzy. Or you get some back pain, you're tired. Or you find you get sleep is more difficult. Or you spend hours looking at your cell phone or watching Netflix or other medias. Then our attention keeps being drifting away when we're working or listening to someone else. All of a sudden, a notification occurs and I attend to that. And some of us may even get depressed and anxious. And just for a note, just lift your hand for a moment and to give me as the speaker a sense, how many of you have some experience like this, that some of these symptoms occur? If yes, just lift your hand for a moment. Great. I don't mean that's great at all. I see literally most of you hand went up. And that is absolutely common. When we do studies of students, but also with employees, what we find is that most, if not everyone, after working with digital devices, report exhaustion, stiffness, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, insomnia, cold hands and feet, you name it. And it's highly more hours you tend to work at that, the more common it becomes. It doesn't mean you have to have it. So before we go on, let's take a momentary break, because the one thing happens for most of us is that we become immobilized at the computer and we're just seeing and thinking. So for a moment, let's do a little movement. What I'd like you to do is bring your hands above you, just like this, all of you. And now I'd like you just to move back and make big circles with your arms. Really make big circles. Very big circles. The other way. And notice what you can do as you're moving this way. When you're going up, you can inhale through your nose, and as you go down with the arms, you exhale through your nose. And now move the arms even differently. Put the palms up, and now repeat that similar movement, more back and forth. As you go to the left, exhale. When you go up, inhale. When you go to the right, exhale. Go back and forth lightheartedly, as if you're like a tree being blown with by a breeze or a wind. Good enough. Now let your arms just drop to your lap. Plop. And now I'd like you to bring your right hand to your left shoulder. And now take a breath into your stomach, so your stomach gets bigger. Inhale through your nose. And now as you exhale through your nose, stroke your arm down at the same time. I'm going to make a sound just to make that point, but the air flows out through my nose. And I stroke all the way down from my shoulder, down my arms and out my hand. From my shoulder, and now I move to the opposite side. My left hand on my right shoulder. Take a breath. And repeat this once more. Now gently lift your arms slightly up on your lap, from your lap. Hold them up. And let them just plop down. And now with your eyes closed, be aware underneath your forearms, on your thigh. Feel the pulling of gravity on your arm. Now for the next little while, just let the air flow in and out through your nose. And as you exhale, air flowing out, the warm air going out the nose. And then when you inhale, feel the cool air coming in. And then imagine and feel as if your lungs are in your stomach like a big balloon. So when you exhale, the stomach becomes smaller. And when you inhale, you let the stomach expand. And now let the air flow very easily. So when you inhale, you almost inhale to the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Then you almost hold and then you exhale. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And let the air reoccur again, inhaling same rate, very easily and slowly. So when you let the air flow out, feel it flowing down your arms and out your fingers. And when the air comes in, feel the air flowing in through the nose. And the stomach widen. And with each breath, feel yourself getting quieter. Being aware of the flow down your arm. And I think that's enough for now. You can do this much longer. So now just wiggle for a moment. Take a deep breath. Stretch. And let your arms just drop on your lap. All right. The more small practice you do, during the day at the computer, the more will your health be maintained and improved. I can promise that. But what are the many factors we have that I'll call Zoom fatigue factors? One, while working on Zoom, we have increased attentional load. We have increased near visual stress. We have signal problems, not being able to see the screen, not hearing well as my voice moves in and out, for example. We have reduced communication cues, how we talk to each other. We have many ergonomic factors, and we keep being immobilized. You know, if you think about it, the screen freezes. It's a weird echo. Dozens of heads staring at you. There are work huddles, the one-to-one meetings, and then once you're done for the day, hang out with your friends, all on the same screen. There's no change in scenery. Now imagine how different that is if we all went to a bar, and in the bar we meet our lovers, we meet our professors, we meet our family, all in the same location. And then you can realize that feels strange. And unknowingly, when we meet only on Zoom, we have something very similar occurring. Zoom fatigue, as I said, is increased attentional load. We have to pay much more attention to the nonverbal cues, the facial expressions, the tone, the pitch of voice, the body language, especially when the video and audio qualities are poor quality. And then you have to do multitasking. It isn't that I'm just speaking right now. I have to be the actor, I have to be the producer, and the director at the same time. I need to be able to talk, to load the PowerPoints, to look at the chats. That increases massive amount of multitasking. And then a very big piece is the near visual stress. We forget that we focus on this flat screen just in front of us. That means our eyes have to converge. That stresses us. We tend to stiffen. Our neck tends to tighten a bit. Our eyes do not relax. And note how different that is than when we were used to be from an evolutionary background, walking outside through the meadows or whatever. We would look at a tree at the far distance. Then we would look nearby. Then again at the far distance. We would alternate and we would have movement. So the moment we remember that, it will improve our health. The other part is when we're looking at the screen, almost like in fear, we don't blink. Our blinking rate goes way down. That often leads to dry eyes. We tend to do very shallow breathing. And then we have problems, which are called bandwidth problems, that at home, especially now, we may have 3 or 4 family members all trying to access the same pipe with the bandwidth. It doesn't work. So we have reduced, screen clarity, our voices warble. And then we have the visual displays, which we forget about. What is it the viewer sees when I look at you? I see your house, your room, or I may see cats jumping up and down. That makes a fun background. However, they may be highly distracting. Or, which is a challenge even for me in my house, the way I've set this up is that behind me are a number of bright skylights. And they're so bright that my face tends to be darker. So I have made much better recordings in the evening when my room is light, even though I've put a black carpet, a black blanket in front of the skylights. Then we have sometimes too low light for the camera on the person's face, and our screen is too small. We really have real estate problems, so I cannot easily see. And finally, depending on the technology, we may have time delays. And you may notice sometimes that when you're speaking with someone that you may want to interrupt, you seem to interrupt them before they're finished because there's this time delay. And in research studies, we know if the time delay is more than 1.2 seconds, you automatically, without knowing, tend to interpret the other person as less friendly and more negative. So remember that at least. And then depending where you are, I could have kids crying in the background, other family members being there, all that competes in a noise level. And then we have such reduced communication cues. You know, I need to look at you on the face. For many of you, you have now taken away your screen, which is nice, because sometimes it's much better to listen. The trouble is, as the speaker, I have no idea what you're experiencing. All I get is zombies. The people are sitting there, and I have no idea if they're present, if they're doing email, or maybe they're doing Instagram, or who knows what. And then as speakers, we're sometimes very self-conscious how I look. And that again is another piece. Okay. And now I only make a list of all the bad things for good things, but really we have moved now especially to a 24/7 digital lifestyle. At work, we sit at the computer, but now our work is at home. In the same room, we watch television, we watch streaming videos, we look at our cell phones. It is 24 hours a day. And we are more and more captured by all the messages, the notifications to which we react. There's almost no time to regenerate at times. And as you can see in this lovely picture, here are people even lying in bed at night, still symbolizing holding the cell phone and communicating to others, except not to themselves. And then we're outside, as you can see, we're all, instead of communicating with each other, we're communicating through this flat screen at the beach, or even at the bathroom at state, or or sitting crookedly at an office or restaurants, although no longer today with our social distancing. And now let's go to the ergonomic part of the world. Here's us work. We have our laptop, we look down, we're frowning, or this picture is from a restaurant, obviously, no longer, but there's plenty of social distancing here. And you can see, look at how she is sitting, the curvature of her spine, trying to compromise so she can work. She's really doing the best thing she can do for the setting, because she is trying to arms go forward that will reduce the tension in her shoulders. She's reaching the keyboard so she can rest her elbows on the tabletop. She's thereby lowering her head so she doesn't have to tilt back too much. But the biomechanical costs are massive. She has the contraction in the neck here. Look at the collapse of the whole abdomen, in a sense, in a curvature, the contraction in that, or compression, the having to look down. And that is how so many of us are working hour after hour after hour. So what are our technostress factors? We're connected. Without knowing, we have ongoing vigilance and arousal. We have low-level muscle tension. We tend to breathe more shallowly, which really makes a kind of arousal and anxiety. We tend to stare, not blink. As I said many times before already, we're immobilized. We are unaware that we are doing it. That is the big picture. We don't know that we do this till we feel the discomfort. And then we may have our workload or the absence of workload or stress, and we often are not trained. Here's from our research data to give this point. We have seen this with literally hundreds, if not thousands of people. The theme is very similar. So what does this show? We're looking at people at their muscle tension of their shoulders. So we put electrodes on their shoulders, on our forearms, and we look at how they breathe. So if you look at the lines here, on the screen here, where it says chest, you see these slower lines going up and down. That's a breathing line. This says I inhale and I exhale. I inhale and I exhale. And now this is the movement in the stomach. They're occurring at the same time. And muscle tension in the shoulders. You put electrodes on the shoulders. You can do it at home. And when your shoulders tighten a bit, the line goes up. Or on the forearm. We can do many other measurements. Now, all we ask the person to do is to bring their hands to the keyboard and rest, just like he is doing. And what is so interesting that for many people, when they bring their hands to the keyboard without awareness, Their shoulders stay slightly tense, as indicated by number 1 here. Their forearms stay tense, and yet they will say they're totally relaxed. They're unaware. Now they're asked to work. They would call typing, data entry. And notice when the person now works, well, the forearm muscles are tightening. They have to, because the fingers are moving. These muscles are working. That is correct. However, the shoulders stay up the whole time. The person doesn't know it. Unknowingly, they're raising the shoulders. They're lifting like this. I'm way exaggerating. It isn't even visible sometimes. And they may do this for a half an hour without any pauses. And so then, when they again let their hands rest on the keyboard, the tension may stay, etc. It is the most common pattern we have seen. And so the key is to realize, I probably am doing this. I'm probably breathing very quickly. Notice how quickly the breathing is going when they're working. And the opposite side is they would not be blinking. Okay, let me give this as an example for a moment. As you're sitting, I'd like you just to lift your right knee slightly up so the foot is about an inch away, 2 inches away from the floor. So take your right knee, lift it slightly up so the foot is 2 inches away from the floor. Just hold it there. Notice the initial impulse when you did this, you held your breath. Keep holding it. Keep holding it. I could ask you to hold it for a long time, but many of you may even notice that you already feel some discomfort. If you feel some discomfort, just put your hand up for a moment. Let's let it up and relax. Let it go. Shake the legs for a moment. Get rid of the tension. Good. Notice I did not ask you to lift the leg very high. I didn't put weight on your foot. You just lift it a little bit. After a few minutes, a few 20, 30 seconds, and even less, you start feeling some discomfort in the muscles that are used to lift the leg. This is the analogy, what happens with your shoulders. Unknowingly, when you lift your shoulders, the same process occurs, except you're unaware of the discomfort. Now go back to the muscles of the hip, which lifted your leg. And note that when you walk, you use the same muscles. So when you walk, the legs are going back and forth. The muscle tightens, then relaxes in the walking, tightens and relaxes. And if you don't have any hip problems, you can walk for miles or hours. And so in a way, the muscles are being used all the time. The difference is the muscle tightens to do the beginning movement and then tightens and then relaxes and then tightens. That is the function of muscles. So going back to the slide here, you can see the person holds the muscles tight all the time. And eventually, if they keep doing that, they'll get discomfort. The discomfort may not occur till the end of the day. However, the intervention is to keep interrupting. So all of you, just as you've been watching, just wiggle your shoulders for a moment. Okay. Great, you're doing a great job doing that. Very nice. Excellent. Okay. And the more you take these micro breaks, the better. Here you see another person doing the same thing. And the major part I want to make here, you can also look at the person's heart rate. And here you see when the person works, here they're working, their heart rate goes way up. And again, they're totally unaware that they are aroused. And if you work at that level of arousal continuously, you potentially get at risk. And finally, I love this slide and the research we did with children who did computer games. And when children play computer games, our kids, almost all will have shoulder tension, ongoing forearm tension, and breathe this very rapid pattern compared to their baseline. And they'll do this for 20, 30, 50 minutes in a row. I wonder what the cost will be. Okay. let me give the momentary experience of what we do in our bodies when we work at the computer. So this is an experiential exercise. So please do this. What I'd like you to do is take a pen or so, or any object, put it next to your keyboard to the side. If I'm sitting at the shoulder width. I'm going to put the object slightly to the side, which I'm going to hold in my hand just like this. And then in a moment, I'm going to ask you to take this object and draw address, but start with the last letter. So if I'm at Holloway Avenue, which I'm not, but let's say that's my address, I draw, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the E, the letter E with this object on the tabletop, E. Then when I finish, I click like on my mouse. Then I do the V. Or U, E, U. I have to even learn how to spell. I'm so used to knowing avenue, A-V-E. Well, I'm going to do it the long way. E, U. I won't go any further. Anyway, but what I like you to do is do the movement, that the movement is very small. So the letter is less than a ½ inch. Are you ready? Let's start. Are you ready? Have the object ready? Now start drawing as quickly as possible. The letters backwards. At each letter, click. Do it quicker, 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 quicker. Don't make a mistake. And are you holding your breath? Are you tightening your shoulders? Are you stiffening your trunk? And if you did that happen, just lift your hand up so we can see. Great. I think almost everybody, when you do this, you observe that pattern. When you're trying to mouse carefully, whether on Excel or anywhere else, we tend to hold our breath, we tend to stiffen our trunk, and the more mouse is to the side, the more we do it. Once you observe that, and we realize we do this naturally without knowing, we need to learn to interrupt that. Okay? So basically, as you can see, we're frozen in place. We held our breath, we tightened our trunk. It's called stress immobilization syndrome. Okay? So what can we do for these? One, take many, many, many breaks. Wiggle. You know, there are many ways to wiggle. I often will sit on a ball, which will make me wiggle easily. So I have a big ball, but just the key is to wiggle more and more. Use interrupt programs to remind you to stand up, or drink tons and tons of coffee or tea, so you have to keep going to the bathroom. No. Okay? And then get up. Every 30 minutes, get up, do something different. Okay. Or for those who are at San Francisco State, you can download a free program called Stretch Break. This is a program that pops up on your computer automatic, once you have installed it, automatically to guide you through different stretches, whether it's breathing, whether it's movement, unimportant. You can set the timing on it. So if you click on options, you could have options how often it would be. The website for that at San Francisco State to download it is its.sfsu.edu/guides/stretch-break-pro. Free of charge. You can install it in your computer, and it will remind you when you're totally captured in teaching or watching news or whatever you may be watching, to interrupt and do that. For other people, I've just talked to the manufacturer of this. They're now making it available free for everybody. So if you go to Stretch Break, it's produced by paratech.com, paratech, P-A-R-A-T-E-C.com. They have promised me that for the COVID period, they'll make it available at no charge for everybody. Okay. The next part is to regenerate. Remember, when stressed, we breathe quickly, we hold our breath, and so refocus on breathing. It's important to breathe through your nose, in and out. The nose filters the air. It warms it, It moisturizes. It reduces the airway irritation when you inhale. Moreover, if you start breathing very slowly, about 6 breaths a minute, that means that I'm breathing about the count of 3 or 4 in the inhalation, that slow transition occur, and a count of 4 or 5 on the exhalation. Then I'm starting to breathe at a rhythm that will increase my heart rate when I inhale and decrease my heart rate when I exhale, and I'll develop more sympathetic parasympathetic balance. In addition, when you're breathing through your nose, your body will produce more nitric oxide, will act also as a slight antiviral agent. Okay, so that's one. Two, and I think this is critical as mind and body and emotions are connected. Stop watching and listening to negative news. At best, check the news once a day to know what's going on, and then at least alternate that with more positive images. Definitely go outside and get fresh air. Be in the sun. The sun will give the vitamin D that will help our immune system. And then reconnect with friends and share positive experiences. The data is very good if you look at immune functions. Those people who have lots of social connections, positive ones, have, for the similar age group and older people, have significantly better immune response against viruses. They produce a much better response to fight viruses. From an evolutionary perspective, that makes sense. If I were in a small group, I would be more exposed to viruses and bacteria, so that immune component needs to be strengthened, and it is. When I'm outside by myself and I'm socially isolated, then I don't get exposed to those viruses. But then I'm much more in danger to be injured. So then I need to get my inflammatory response. So literally, by increasing the social connectiveness, you reduce your inflammatory responses, at least when that social connection is safe. And you will actually increase your immune response to fight viruses. The data is quite good, I would say. Okay? And then always remind yourself, however good, bad, or horrible it is, especially the horrible ones, it too shall pass. You woke up again the next day. My gosh, it has passed for that day. Okay. And as I remember, as one of the people in our training program said many years ago about all this, I never realized that I braced my shoulders, held my breath while I was typing. I now know the importance of not doing this and having to change. But let me keep going. Ergonomics. This is how we often sit. We don't know it. I don't know, my head is forward, but that's what we do. And then we adapt where we are. We use our kitchen table and put our laptop on it. The keyboard is really too high. Friends of mine use, in fact, an ironing board. They normally iron and put a laptop on it because they can make the height of the iron board higher so they can stand while working. I thought that was brilliant, but it's even better if they had the screen further away. Notice on this cartoon, a very old cartoon, you know, if this is the appropriate ergonomics, if you're more petite, you don't fit. And if you're too large, you don't fit. The experience all of us have done in airplanes. The airplane seats are designed for the average person. It means it doesn't fit anybody, at least not me. Okay? The ideal versions, more or less, not totally, is the concept that if you have a laptop, you want the screen at the top of your eyebrows, the top of the screen, more or less. And the keyboard is such position that your shoulders, your arms can hang down straight. You can bend the elbows, the forearms at about 90 or 100, and then they can rest easily on the tabletop, and then the hands can work on the keyboard. Or, so there are many different ways to do it. Yet this is how many of us work. And you can see he's doing it perfectly. He's compensating. The keyboard is really too high for him. So what he does, he bends forward a bit, his shoulders are up. He can't quite see the screen because of the light, so he has to crane his head forward, and he has no idea he does that. I wonder how many of us are doing something very similar. And remember, when you tilt your head forward, it is equivalent to a 60-pound weight pulling on the back. If you're fully erect, it takes only about 10 to 12 pounds of work, the more the head goes forward. And yet, how many of us are not in this position with our cell phones or at this position looking at the screen? Let's figure out arranging a laptop at the moment. The laptop is the most challenging ergonomically because the keyboard and the screen are connected. So if you think ideally you want to sit in such a way that when you're sitting, you can sit comfortably, you can let your arms just hang, your hands just drop on your lap, and then just bring the hands slightly up to reach the keyboard. That is the appropriate height for the keyboard. And in many cases, if not all cases, that means it's lower than your kitchen table, which is often the equivalent table that we use. And then if my fingers are at the keyboard, it means my head has to look down like this. On the other hand, if I want to make the screen at the right height for the keyboard, my eyes, then I need to be more up, have the screen up, and have to raise my arms up like this. There's really no good solution. The easiest solution you see programmers do is that they slouch back, they bring their pelvis way forward, they're leaning way forward, and then it means their head sinks down, their hands are more up, resting on the table, and now their hands are at the keyboard way in front of them, and they can look at the screen. In some ways, ergonomically, that makes it easier and less stressful. It's their solution. There are really two solutions which I would recommend. One, use an external monitor. I know it's expensive, but for probably $100, $150, many of us can get an external monitor, a screen, which you then use to look at. You use your laptop keyboard as your keyboard and mouse tracking. That's one. Or two, you use an external keyboard, you plug into your laptop and put the laptop on the stand. Those are the two obvious solutions which work best. Here you can see it as an example on the left. Here the person is standing. Here what they have done, look at the height. Their arm is dropping nicely. Hand is forward. They can work on the external keyboard here. And now their laptop is on a small stand or books. And now they can look at the screen here or even at a bigger screen here. And here you can see me. This is my first approach of this for my own house. Here's my work table. Here's the laptop. So I'm using the laptop keyboard and then have an external mouse. So that makes it easier next to the keyboard. And I have a larger monitor here. Later on, I changed that. And I said, gosh, I need more real estate. I need more screen, especially when teaching on Zoom. I need to be able to look at the screen. I need to look at the PowerPoints. And at that point, what I did is I got an external keyboard. This one, in fact, is so my fingers are easier. And so now my external keyboard is here. My screen, you cannot see, that would be a straight ahead. That's the large screen, that's still the same. And next to it is now my laptop screen, which I often use as a second monitor. And notice my adaptation to sit at the appropriate height so I can be comfortable is a very cheap wooden stool with a little wedge pillow so I'm comfortable. Or more sophisticatedly, you can buy these stands which you can put on your kitchen table or so, in which you can alternate being up, standing, or down. So here the person is now working while standing. They have this little device that they put on the table and they continually alternate going up or down. Or sometimes when we're working, we tend to always collapse this horrible way. Any kind of wedge you put in here will help your spine to be straighter. But you can see the problem in this case. Even now she is sitting better for her spine and for her arms. She's still looking down. The only way you would solve that is have the screen up here. Okay, Another side note is the keyboard. So many of us, unless you do lots of number entry, do not need a white keyboard with a number pad. If you put if you mouse next to a number pad earlier, you have much more muscle tension than if you mouse next to a narrow keyboard. So I would recommend that if you don't need a number pad, put the mouse next to the keyboard. And many of you do it centrally with a trackpad anyway. Okay, how to arrange your computer station. Ideally, you start with your feet on the floor. Good luck. Then you sit on the chair. So your angle of the knees is about 90 degrees. The chair is not too deep. You have some low support in your lower back so you can lean back. And you bring your hands down the same angle as before, where the keyboard is, and then you adjust the monitor at eye level. And then alternate a lot. Do not keep sitting. Here's Erik Rosenberg, and you can see very nicely, he's our department at RPT, and you can see here he's sitting, and then he's very lucky. He has this table that can go up for different heights. Now he is standing, and he's being very physical. He is also on a bungo board that moves back and forth, so he's not static. Anyone who can arrange something like that is great. But you can achieve something very similar, as my daughter did, using an ironing board. I was really surprised what she did that. Okay, over here I'm doing it at my own house a little differently. Sometimes I sit on the chair. Sometimes I sit on the stool, and sometimes I stand. The more I can alternate, the better. But this is really what happens when your head goes forward. That's what we forget. This is our collapse. This is a study of my students. Here we're measuring their breathing. We're measuring the tension in the neck and shoulders. Here they're in normal position. Look at the tension in the neck and shoulders. They're breathing less in their abdomen. They can't because they're collapsed. Now when they sit more aligned and erect, the tension in the shoulder goes down and they can breathe more freely. I highly recommend becoming aware of that. The challenge is, how can I become aware that I'm doing this, that I collapse? Good luck. The way we do that now is that you can buy biofeedback devices. These are called Upright Go. You can buy them on Amazon. There are many other companies, but this one I happen to like. I put it on my neck. I calibrate it on my cell phone with Bluetooth, and every time I collapse, it vibrates and it reminds me. It may remind me to get up because I collapsed when I was tired. Okay, I need to do something. So all of you, just for a moment, do something. Just stretch. Make some noise. Really go. Really explode out the air. You can do this. No one else who knows anything. Even more. Great. And if you just check now and you rate your energy and arousal, you find that you're slightly more alert. And your mood may even have gotten better, I hope. So that is what it reminds me to do when it vibrates. I get up, I wiggle, or even change my thoughts. And then how can I improve my vision? Because after work at the computer, my eyes just get tired. One, the difficulty seeing, maybe the screen is just too small. I don't see enough. Invest in a larger screen with maybe where the symbols be larger, so it's easier to see. Two, for some of us, we need computer glasses at the distance for the screen. Three, you must take vision breaks. I'll go through that. And four, reduce glare and background. Take vision breaks. Every few minutes, look away from the screen. I said this at the beginning. From an evolutionary perspective, and I walked on the savannah, I wouldn't be looking at this nearby object the whole time. I'd be looking at the far distance. So for a moment, look away. Hopefully, if you're lucky, and you have a window, look out of the window. Look at the far distance at the sky. When you do that, the eyes diverge. The muscle around the lens can relax and flatten. And then as you're looking at the far distance, just for a moment, just wiggle your shoulders, look, but really just gently look. Then close your eyes. Take a gentle breath in your tummy. And as you exhale through your nose, let your eyes just softly open up. Let's do that again. Close your eyes. Take a breath in your abdomen. Let it expand. Let the air start flowing out. And when the air flows out, let your eyes softly open up. And then keep looking at the far distance in green. Green often relaxes the eyes most. You need to look at the far distance every so often. And when you do that, you can almost feel your whole face relaxing. So take many, many vision breaks. And then be aware of glare. Are you looking at a screen and next to the screen is a very bright object? Are lights reflecting in your screen? Have bright lights be at 90 degrees to your screen. And if you're participating in video conferences, be sure your background is darker than your foreground. The lights are up front so you can see the facial expressions of you or others. And finally, if I look at all these, I'm going to skip the cell phone, all these. What I want to summarize, just a note on cell phones, just for an instant. I like cell phones. I should just do this. I realized that I realized that people are prisoners of their phones. That's why they call them cell phones. Anyway, most of us are like on the left, but we can improve ergonomics even by being aware of it and putting our pocketbook, our face on it, so we can look more down. And finally, for recommendations, I want to remind each of us to optimize ergonomics, to be aware of your body. Remember, awareness is before it hurts. Assuming you do feel okay, that's the time to move and wiggle. Assume that's the time to breathe lower. Practice stress management. Take a holistic process. Many of them have stress management components and healthy lifestyle components. Install the stretch break, and I cited before. Schedule time where you're not at all interrupted, either at work at the computer or without a computer. Do vision care. Look up, rest the eyes. Fitness, take a walk. Do some strength training at home. Give a lot of positive supports for your colleagues who are now who are not connected. Send them a message. Keep your cell phone, tablet, and any of the Wi-Fi devices away from your body. Avoid screens at least 45 minutes before going to sleep because it will interfere a bit with the melatonin production interfere. And finally, respect your evolutionary past. When I think of all this, I'll go 5 minutes, if that's okay. I want to just go make some comments about the coronavirus, what I can do. And there may be 1 or 2 useful pieces. One, you all know the public guidelines. I'm going to skip that. So I'll focus on reducing viral concentrations and changing your breathing pattern. Remember, the risk of getting sick is how many viral particles you get in and the confidence of your immune system. By doing stress management techniques, as I alluded to, nasal breathing slowly, or listening to the programs next week and the following weeks. There are other programs we offer to reduce stress, to reduce our stress and improve our health. And that will indirectly enhance our immune competence. And if we are more immune competent, we have better probability for health. We forget that when we exhale, all these particles go out. When someone coughs, as you can see here, there goes all these particles spraying out, very much so. And if you inhale them, that happens. If you inhale them only for a moment, most likely, after not, you'll probably, the odds are you may get a lighter version of the disease. If you keep inhaling it, like if the person's in your own home and they keep coughing or shedding this virus without changing the air, then you're continually re-exposing yourself to the virus. And that seems to be related to a much more severe version of the disease, especially also have more air pollution past. You can see But even with vaping, you can get the idea why we have the 6 feet distance. But even that is not really good enough. I look at this picture when I was in Latvia this fall, and you can just see they're rebreathing, and these could be the metaphor for all the viruses. And then when we go jogging or bicycling, remember we have a slip trail, and the air, the particles go behind us. So that's why be aware of the wind. Because just because you're 6 feet away, you could be flooded by the person's particles. And that's why we're wearing the masks. The masks don't really filter many of the particles for you, but they protect others. That's our public service. So what to do at home and anywhere else? Take the old public health guidelines by which they reduced tuberculosis by 82% infection rates, where children would have lower childhood illnesses before we had vaccinations. Open windows to allow cross ventilation through your house setting. That means the viruses, even if someone is producing them, be blown away. That's probably the biggest reason why at an aircraft carrier, at cruise ships, people got such high infection rates. The air was recycled completely. Use exhaust fans to ventilate the building. Air comes in. Use a and HEPA filter, high efficiency particulate air to purify the air within the rooms. Avoid buildings with recycled air, and then wear masks for other people. That note, if for any more information about this area, and I'm open for questions at the end easily, but please contact me at the Institute for Holistic Health Studies. And here's my information, and I'll quickly answer more questions. Thank you all for attending, and I'm open for questions.
I like the idea of the, Ms. Blessing, I like the idea of the stands.
Yes, the stand, it's critical. The key is variety. Just like with foods. You can eat something, but if you eat the same food every day, probably not so good. The same thing is true with working at the computer. Sometimes work standing, a couple of hours work sitting, wiggle around, that's probably the best.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For any information, please send contact. We'll gladly answer them and share them with you. And I thank you all for participating. And I will turn the voice back over to our host, Jennifer, who was the one who was responsible for setting up these sequences. So I want to really thank Jennifer for organizing this program as a service for the community.